Welcome back to the Tuesday Weekend, the podcast for those of us brave enough to work in the restaurant industry, but also stupid enough to work in the restaurant industry. We are talking about restaurant managers this week. We had been discussing all the various duties of a manager, and getting back into that, the next on the list is basically hanging out at the host stand and managing the flow of service during service.
Yeah.
Now, I know a lot of customers maybe don't understand this, but the concept that there's basically no kitchen in the world that can take we open the doors and every seat gets filled in the first 15 minutes.
Correct.
Like they will be completely overwhelmed and the whole night is going to go badly because you just screwed them. I really do think of it as in 15-minute increments, but there is not just a capacity for what the kitchen could do, but there's only so much a server can do. You cannot give a single server 5 new tables and expect them to be able to hit them all within a couple of minutes. And then all of them are going to need drinks. All of them are going to have questions. For both seating the guests and, of course, knowing your servers and knowing who can take what, and kind of gating how much pressure the kitchen gets at any given time. It really is the host stand's duty to run defense for the rest of the staff.
Now, I completely agree with this. The one place I mentioned before, the Oyster Bar in Salt Lake City, in its heyday, it's not there anymore. Their lead host, was salaried. Mm-hmm. The Market Street Grill next door, their breakfast lunch host, she was salaried. She was being paid $50,000 a year to be a host, and she ran that restaurant perfectly. Also in that restaurant, there was no tip out for the host. We were not allowed to give the host money like we were buying tables. That is the only place in 30 years I worked at where the front, the people, your defenders and stuff, did not need managerial help. Every place else I worked at, they did, and it depended. You knew which manager was working that night, how the night would go already. It's like, This is going to be nice and fair. This is going to go out well. Or they're going to start seating by section, or they're just going to seat full sections at once. It's like, hey, here's a server with 5 tables. The rest of the restaurant's empty. Next server gets 5 tables. Rest of the restaurant's empty. I mean, and that's how the manager's like, go just seat them.
The neighborhood chop house that I worked at in Tennessee that I served at, sure, we had usually, high school girl hanging out at the host stand. And yes, some of them were actually more in tune with what should be happening there. But basically for lunch and dinner service during those busier times, there was always a manager there with them. And, whether it was the manager staying here and she was bouncing around, or she was staying here and the manager was bouncing around, there was always somebody standing there and always somebody else moving around the dining room, in part to go check on where the tables are. Because if, they're done with the dessert and they're just waiting to pay their check, great. I know that in the next 10 minutes, I should be able to get that table back. And
correct. You have server, they don't realize it. You have hosts that don't pay attention to any of that. It's kind of a personnel thing versus a time thing. When I was at the restaurant, my best host when I left the restaurant was a 16-year-old high school girl. She was fantastic. She was better than the college chicks, the older girls we had working, the older guys we had. They were just awful. And she actually paid attention to all this. The rest of them just kind of went through the motions. Secondarily, since COVID, you need a manager at the host stand because people automatically get angry when they want a table and there's not one. And they always want to talk to a manager. Even if the host is like, I don't have tables and we're booked for the next 2 hours, they don't believe them with 30 people standing around waiting for tables.
That was...
As soon as a manager says it, they're like, oh, okay.
Well, one of my big frustrations managing a restaurant in a casino is the ultimate players coming in and ignoring the fact that we're on a 45-minute wait. They're an ultimate player. They deserve a table right now. And if I don't bend over fast enough, then that's a complaint to the ownership. So anyway, but the other part of that, it really is keeping the flow of service. And I had mentioned watching where all the diners are in the progress of their meal, but then also sometimes it is just helping the busser clear that table.
Yeah.
or resetting it so then you could get that next party down. Sometimes it is, you see, all right, the server just got that big 8-top set, and hey, their deuce over there, the
And also with the
credit
manager going
card is
like,
sitting there in the check. Just go run their check.
but also the manager just going like, okay, I need an 8-top over here. So don't seat this.
Don't
This
see
one's
here.
about done. We're going to put,
Exactly.
and you tell the busser, as soon as they're done, put them together, make an 8-top, and you let the host know your 8-top here will be ready in 10 minutes. I mean, managers need to help. They can't just sit around and do nothing. And I've worked with so many clipboard managers, as we call them,
Yes.
that just they're there, but the restaurant is essentially running itself.
And we will get back to clipboard managers, but
Yeah.
I really see my role as a manager during service as support staff.
Yes.
And, it's like whatever it takes for the servers to keep doing what they do. Sometimes it is jump back in the kitchen and expedite because that kitchen didn't have an expediter. Sometimes, or running food to a table, or whatever that is, nothing is beyond the manager's duty. Nothing's below the manager's duty. So, and then that actually does touch into the next point I wanted to bring up, and that is table touching, which I think is actually the basic minimum thing that a floor manager should do if a couple is going to be there for an hour and 15 minutes eating a meal. That is plenty of time for you at some point during the period while they are eating to come by and say, how is the soup? Hey, how is the pizza? Can I get you another drink? Even if that is, I mean, now sure, the server should be the ones checking the drinks, but
Yeah.
there's so many problems that can be prevented if you, as a manager, proactively go to the table. It's like, oh, hey, you didn't get your, okay, let me run and grab that for you. No
Yeah.
problem.
Or hey, how you doing? Where are you from? Just
Exactly. It's just like the fact that I clearly in a busy restaurant have stopped to take a moment to talk to you means a lot to especially those of us paying attention. It's just like, hey, I'm doing great. How's your night going? Yeah.
I mean, again, at the restaurant, after COVID, we went through a lot of managerial changes. The last iteration of that I was there for, they had 4 people who were vying for like a salaried manager position. They're all in their 20s. And I kept telling all of them, I'm like, you guys are insane. You don't want to do this. You're going to make less money. Well, the one who won and got that job was a former hostess. And I can say this in all honesty that in 30 years, she was easily the top 3 worst hostesses I ever worked with, ever.
Oh,
When you talk about timing, there was none. I worked upstairs. Downstairs would be slammed. I'd have a table. The 2 servers upstairs would have a table with me. We had a room of 60, and she would pop up the stairs, look around like a scared rabbit, and I'd be like, okay. And I would just start pouring glasses of water. And the servers would be getting ice and stuff and like getting tables set because we knew she was going to give us like 20 tables right then all at once. She became a manager because they said she was local to the area. She lived on Coronado. She knew all the locals. She grew up there. She went to high school. Everyone knew her. And that was great for table tapping the locals. But I mean, it's San Diego and it's Coronado. It's an entirely tourist destination. If we only relied on locals, we would have been closed in like a month.
yeah.
And she would only talk to the local tables. She was terrified to talk to any other tables.
Oh, geez.
I
I mean,
mean, she was awful at it.
I am not necessarily great with names, but if you were in my restaurant last week and I see you in again this week,
I'm going to
I'm coming
recognize it.
over to be like, hey, you're back.
Yeah.
It's
She was
not that
she
hard.
was the opposite of that. I'm like, yeah, table 23 is, but she's like, oh God, I hate those people. And I'm like, you haven't even talked to them. She's
Mhm.
like, but you can just tell by looking at them. I'm like, what you're no, that's your job.
Yeah,
Like I would go down like,
still
I
your job.
really hate to tell you this, but table 23 wants to talk to you about something. It's this, and this. They
Well,
have to talk to a manager.
yeah. And that
Have
actually
fun.
kind of gets to the next item I had listed, and that is the problem solving, the conflict resolution
Yeah.
during service. And first, in a very gaming metaphor, the manager is the tank of the party to absorb all the damage coming from the guests.
Yeah.
If there is a problem, you put the manager there and they will just deal with it.
Yep.
But then part of it too is I have the ability to say yes or no to things, kind of like you mentioned, that maybe they won't hear it from a server, but from the manager, like, no, I'm the one making the decision. And
Yeah.
yes, I will, or no, I'm not. And I mean, if you want to appeal to my boss, go right ahead. He's not here. Like, if you want to complain to the owner, he's some dude who doesn't even know my name, who lives down in Vegas. But go right ahead, make yourself happy.
Yeah, it's like our owners live in Australia. Sure. Give them a
Yeah,
call.
yeah,
See how it
right.
goes.
If you actually know them, then well, it's been a pleasure working here. Thank you all. But
I love that. I know the owner. So do I.
so do I. Yeah. Um,
And
yeah, right. Well, and again here, and I've made this point in the past, but I will continue to, is if there is a genuine issue that comes up in a restaurant and you come to me as the manager and say, hey, this isn't what I was expecting. This is like I'm disappointed by this. This doesn't meet my standards. This doesn't meet what I expect this restaurant to produce. I will absolutely do what I can to correct that. If you come at and like, this is bullshit, this is blah, 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 I will do the bare minimum to shut you up. Like the first one, and it's all about the attitude, like abusing the manager or the staff is not going to get very far with me. But if you're like, hey, I come here all the time. I brought my sister because I wanted to show off this place. And then we got this. And hey, it's not what let me make this right. Let me at least at a minimum buy you a drink or whatever. Like let me get you back to giving us another chance in the future, as opposed to walking out of here like never going back there again. But again, I mean, if you're coming in causing a problem, if you're looking to cause a problem,
yeah.
get out of here. I don't want to see you. I don't want you back here abusing my staff anymore. Their job is hard enough.
See, and that same type of in that same vein, a few years ago at a restaurant, we had a table and the server comes back. It was on a patio. She comes back in crying. And it's just like, what happened? Like, this table's so rude and so mean and da 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 da. And then the server in the station next to her is like, yeah, they were just belittling her and talking shit to her and stuff. And I'm like, we told the manager, and the manager like goes and talks to him, comes back, and I'm like, well, and they're like, oh, the table's fine now. We're just going to do another server. And I'm like, no, that's not fine. That's not what we're doing. And it was the same hostess manager. And I'm like, that's absolutely not what we're doing. And me and two servers went out and a busser and cleared their table while they're sitting there, while they're eating. The guy's like, what are you doing? I'm like, you don't have a check. You don't have a bill. You just have to leave. And the guy's like, well, what if we want to stay? And I'm like, we will call the police and charge you with trespassing as a business. You need to leave now. Well, I don't see what the problem is. The manager said it was fine. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's not going to happen anymore. You just have to leave. And I've hated the managers who will just bend over backwards for every single table and give them everything for free and gift cards. And you're just like, that's their solution, is to just give away the house.
Oh, sure. That is a tool in the bag that shouldn't be used very much. Like it's, and yeah, no, that drives me crazy, both as a manager and, even when I wasn't the manager, like that, I don't think that's the best way to resolve a problem.
No,
Um,
it never is.
no, no, because
And that it has kind of almost like a flu-like spread where the tables around like, oh, they just got a free meal. Well, let's complain and we'll get a free meal.
and I also have absolutely zero respect for the people who intentionally will complain about this to try to get the app or the dessert taken off or whatever. Because
Please cue the nice cool sign you're going to put up that says Yelpers or Yelp right there.
yeah, you are the ones driving regular small business owners out of business with your nonsense. Somebody needs to pay for that tiramisu. Sorry you didn't think there was enough sauce on the ravioli, but nah, deal with it.
That's something you say at the beginning of the meal, not, oh, my quesadilla was cold when I got it. I'm like, I've been to your table 4 times and you haven't said a word.
And then the other aspect of conflict resolution, which actually kind of gets into the next part, which is the camp counselor,
Oh,
is sometimes the problem are among the staff. And
yes.
occasionally, like I have during service on a busy Saturday night, had to physically put my body between two of the servers who were just going at it in the middle of the dining room. And I got them to stop. And 3 minutes later, they're back in the kitchen and starting up again. And how did I know? Because I was out on the floor and I heard it. So yeah, I mean, again, this is part of the babysitting. Okay, sometimes there are those just personality conflicts. We all try to be adults. You could set an environment where they get away with that more than others, or you can kind of be like, okay, guys, you're on stage. Really, my reaction to them, to me having to break up a fight between two servers in the middle of the floor is you are embarrassing me right now because I have no control over the nonsense that comes from the guests, but I should be able to control the nonsense that comes from the staff. And right now, both of you are out of line. And really, okay, I got them to finally calm down, but also that's not fun.
No, no, and the staff fights on the floor, while they are rare, they do happen, and when they do happen, they happen. I mean,
Yeah.
we're not talking like a little, lightweight bout before the main event. It's the main event, and the
It's
rest of the servers know it's going to happen. But when you
yep.
see it happen, it's like a train wreck. Everyone just kind of watches. As a server or bartender, you can't step around because you're just going to get embroiled in it. The manager has to come in and just like, you guys back now.
Well, and usually it doesn't come out of nowhere. Usually it's been simmering for a
Yep.
while, and then there's some just ignition point. But I didn't enjoy that aspect of being a manager one bit. But the other end of that really is the camp counselor, and that is actually something that I did kind of like. And now I will put this specifically on the assistant managers. I think that's your job,
Mm.
but as a manager, I want my staff to be able to bring any problem to me, whether that's a personal thing going on that, hey, I just need to vent about this, whether that is something specific to the job or to a coworker or to, the kitchen or something. Like I should be that if if not intermediary, at least a sounding board. If all you need to do is blow off a little steam, sure, I'm here for it. If that's all it takes, and now you can go back on the floor and we're good, perfect. But also, you know, if you are a server who constantly uses your manager in that regard, be aware of that. At
Yeah.
least be cognizant that you're doing that. And hey, maybe once in a while, bring a coffee. Like hey, thanks for always being there for me, boss. Whatever.
I mean, I've got that manager right now who I will talk to about stuff, who I vent to about stuff. And I have three managers, and he's the only one I will do that to. I mean, technically I have more because it's a hotel, but in food and beverage, I have three, and he's the only one I talk to about stuff like this. The head guy we'll get to later. And then the other guy is a brand new manager. He's never been in a managerial position. I mean, I have more restaurant experience than he is old.
Yeah.
And I'm not bringing any of these. I'm bringing basic problems to him and stuff. I'm not saying, hey, we're low on this, or do you have any idea when we're going to get absolute in, or oh, we changed this in the kitchen. Is this how you want this to go? What do you want me to do? Just day to day stuff. But if I have to vent, or if we have a more serious problem, I go to the mid guy because he's going to handle that, and he's going to know what he can take to the boss and what we shouldn't take to the boss, because the boss will just overreact and do the exact wrong thing. He's actually proven that several times in the last year. That if you go to him on this, it's like, okay, that's not what you should do.
Oh, geez. I actually am surprised I haven't said this phrase yet, but from a lot of the managers I have worked for, there are those you learn what to do and what not to do.
Not to do. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we should get to a break, but before I do, what do you think is the most important task for a manager? Really, I mean, we gave quite a list there, and I don't think there's a single one on them that is the brush off one. I mean, obviously, some are more acutely important to the daily running of service. If you have no schedule, you're not going to have any servers there. That's going to be a problem. But and we didn't even talk about ordering an inventory, but it's there. It's a thing. But all right, let's take a quick break. Leave us some comments about what you think the most important task for a manager is. Hit that like button, and we will be back with more thoughts about, well, let's get into clipboard managers.
I would also like to get into hiring.
Oh, yeah, that too.
That's
Okay,
a big one for me.
we will be right back.